Welcome back to another episode of Four Wide. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard, Jonathan Williams, and Dan Kiley. We are here for another exciting week of the NFL recap to give you. And we got some stuff we want to start out with. There's a big game. If you're a Falcons fan, a local guy like we are, you obviously watched that game and you saw how crazy it was. We're going to start out with that here in just a moment. We'll get into that. Then we're going to talk about some rookie quarterbacks getting a start this weekend. Then we'll go into all the rest of the games and everything, and then the picks for next week and how the outlook. We're at 8 games in, so we're halfway through the season at this point. So let's see where the NFL stands this week, or as of this week, and see what we're looking for in the back half of the season, guys. So let's go ahead and get started. Jonathan, when you watch this Falcons game, it was obviously crazy, right? Like everything kind of went to hell in this game. It started strong for the Falcons. You had some good plays here and there. You put yourself in a good spot, and all of a sudden you see Carolina bounce back with that touchdown at the last second and kind of think the game is over. What was going through your head when you were watching that game this afternoon?
It was just a lot of emotions going on at once. Atlanta goes down the field, takes a 6-point lead with like 40 seconds left on the clock, I want to say, maybe even less than that. Then Carolina heaves up a prayer down to the end zone, and DJ Moore comes down with it. But then DJ Moore basically makes the play of the game for the Falcons in that scenario, takes his helmet off after the touchdown, 15-yard penalty. And so Carolina misses the game-winning PAT to then send the game to overtime. Atlanta turns the ball over, their first possession of overtime. Carolina gets prime field position. I believe they're on the 20-yard line in Atlanta's territory. They miss the field goal again, and then Atlanta gets the ball back, and finally they put the game away and kick the game-winning field goal. So just a lot of up and down, a lot of chaos, and just a heck of an ending to a football game, and a big one for Atlanta. Last week we talked about this was a prime stretch of the schedule for Atlanta coming up. They got Carolina twice. They got teams like the Commanders coming up and some other low-end teams. You do have Cincinnati next week, and you got a banged-up secondary right now. So hopefully guys like A.J. Terrell can get healthy and bounce back to come in for next week, because you're going to need it. Regardless of, I know Jamar Chase is out and he's not going to be playing next week, but Joe Burrow can sling the ball around the yard and he's got some other big targets for him. But it's a big win for Atlanta considering the circumstances.
It's Chargers next week. Yeah.
Okay.
The Bengals were last week. We already took that beating.
Oh, sorry. I'm all over the place. Both start with the C,
pretty
Cincinnati,
bad,
whatever.
actually.
Chargers coming in next week. So that's another big game. And again, Justin Herbert, he does his thing, man. He's got a lot of weapons in that offense. So you're going to need your defense at full strength. But shout out to Dean Pease for what he was able to do today. And it was a big win for Atlanta.
The kicker shouldn't determine the outcome of a football game from these players and these coaches. They hate kickers. I'm telling you, these players, they hate kickers because they bust their ass to get in a position to win or lose a football game based on the leg of a guy who, for the most part, doesn't even play the majority of the game or even practice with the team for the most part. And I can say that. I was the kicker. And that's true. For the most time, we were down. I mean, listen, you can't kick a football for 3 hours, okay? You just can't. So you goof off a little bit. But, these guys, they take their job seriously. They are a part of the team, and 1/3 of the game is special teams. It's very, very important. And they don't want to miss those kicks. But, again, they did. And it's, so it's cue that music, whenever they want to talk bad about them. But, hey, I have to point out, I have the entire Arthur Smith fit on today. Okay, I got the
ensemble. He's got the NFL logo on the side and everything on the undershirt. Man, is
bro, I'm telling you.
Look at that.
I have the exact same fit Arthur Smith had on. I am representing my head coach.
It's Halloween, bro. You're dressed up.
I am. This coaching staff is doing an excellent job. Like we were talking about pre-show, a lot of people had negative things to say about Arthur Smith. You have to remember he's dealing with a short deck. He doesn't have the talent that he needs or wants. He doesn't have the salary cap to make the moves that he needs or wants. Neither does Fontenot. And he's in such a bad situation. He's got to get through cap hell. And I hope that we actually give him a chance once we get through cap hell to put together the team that he really wants. But more importantly than Arthur Smith, and I also mentioned this in the pre-show meeting, and I think you guys agree with me, Dean Pease is doing God's work. I don't know how, with the limited resources he has, he doesn't have a legitimate pass rush. He doesn't have a great defense. Defensive line. Grady Jarrett is exceptional, but he doesn't really have a lot of help. We got Lorenzo Carter out here making freaking plays, who hasn't been doing a whole lot in the NFL the last couple of years.
Dogs.
The entire secondary, the entire starting secondary, boys, was out of the game today, and towards the end of the game, they got some chunk plays. I get all that, but just the fact that we stayed in a football game with no secondary. They basically called the guy from Section 302, row R, seat 7 and 8 to come down and play corner and safety today. Okay? I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous what he's being able to do. I think Dean Pease is doing an outstanding job. And whenever he said before preseason about when people talk about Atlanta, they talk about offense, they talk about how terrible our defense is. He said, when I hear people talk about Atlanta, I want them to talk about our defense the same way they do about the Bears or the Ravens. He's like, because we're going to be that kind of team. And God, if he isn't trying, okay? I mean, he doesn't have the money to get the pieces that he needs. He doesn't have talent, but somehow he's producing. Dean Pease is the MVP for me.
So here's the thing. On the defensive side, like you said, like right now they may not have the money to go out and do something. This is where it comes to like you really get to learn about that coaching staff and that organization again as a whole next season when all of that cap space clears up from Matt Ryan's contract, Julio's all these contracts that fully clear out of your bankroll at this point, and all of a sudden you now have money. Next year, you better put some of that money into your defense. I understand the offense is what everybody cares about, and you want to go get these big names. We've talked about Lamar Jackson coming to Atlanta and paying him and all that kind of stuff, right? That's fine if you want to go out and try to do something like that, but you better spend some freaking money on that defense and get some help in that pass rush and get some guys in your secondary that can stay healthy. There's some good players in the Falcons secondary, but they are hurt like crazy this year. It's all year they've been hurt. We haven't had them out there. Like AJ Terrell, he was also not playing again today. And like stuff like we need guys out there on this field playing. And so I want to see them spend some money on that. But let's talk about this game specifically. And you got Eddie Pinheiro, or I think that's how you say his name. By the way, former Florida Gator. So pretty bad weekend for him overall. You know, you lose yesterday by 22
wasn't
points.
Florida's
and then
weekend,
today was not their weekend. And then today you come out and you miss that extra point. And then it puts it into overtime. And then you miss, like you said, Jonathan, the chip shot field goal from it was about the 25 or something. It was a shorter field goal. But like, I want to ask y'all this. How do y'all look at this game? And because I've been seeing mixed signals on social media. You know how Twitter is. People have opinions on everything. And is it DJ Moore's fault? Is it the kicker's fault? What are we looking at as far as the game collapse for Carolina? Who do y'all put the blame on? Because personally, I'm putting it on the kicker. I understand DJ Moore is the reason that extra point was further back and it ended up being a 40-something yard extra point and he missed it. I get that. But man, you missed the field goal in overtime as well, the chip shot field goal. I got to put that on you, and I'm going to take the blame off of DJ Moore at that point. But I don't know how y'all feel. Y'all can go ahead and tell me.
Yeah. Most of the blame's got to be put on the kicker. You had two opportunities to put the game away, two different opportunities for you to do your job, do what you were signed on this team to do, and yet you fail. And I get it. Kickers have a very short leash in the NFL. We saw it with Rodrigo Blankenship in week 1 where he missed the game-winning field goal for the Colts. One kick, and that was enough. They waived him. They released him. Now he's over there with the Arizona Cardinals. But, man,
better situation.
Kickers have a very short leash compared to all other players. And I get it. They might be a little bit more expendable, but regardless, kickers win and lose you games a lot more often than really any other player on the football field, despite them being on the field a whole lot less than anybody else. So DJ Moore,
every time they're on the field, it's points on the board. That's the difference. Every time they're on the field, it's points on the board.
And DJ Moore's idiotic decision to take your helmet off. Look, you've been playing football a long time. At that point, you should kind of know the circumstances at that point, and you should know what you're doing to your team when you do something like that. So a little bit of the blame goes on him, but also at the same time, you still got to hit that PAT or at least hit the chip shot at the end. So I think, a lot of blame to go to both of those players, but missing two opportunities is tough.
Well, and the other thing too is DJ Moore trying to find himself a ticket out of Carolina. I mean, we saw Robbie Anderson. We called that one, and he found his. I don't think that's the case in this situation. But you're right.
But there have been conversations about DJ Moore potentially getting traded. Outside of him looking for something else, there has been conversations of the team looking for a fit for him somewhere else.
Well, hey, listen, if the team who's wanting to make a trade for him turns the tape off after the catch, they're going to like what they see. It's just that,
he made the play.
30 seconds after is where it got out of control. But Man, it's got. I mean, first of all, it's just a boneheaded situation right there, and obviously you can tell that they don't have a great culture in Carolina right now because that's just like you. I understand you're excited. I totally get that, but you can't have a penalty like that at that moment, right? And a mature team would know that. So that's bad. But at the same time, to Jonathan's point, you've got to be able to make your kicks. And I understand. So, a lot of times in a situation where there's a quick change, you like, let's just say you got 3rd and 1 and you think you're going to get it, or you're driving down and then obviously you take a big sack. Now your punter has to go out there, right? And he wasn't expecting to punt. Maybe you were at the 40 and something happened, a bad snap or something. Now it's all the way back. You got to punt. So a lot of times that punt is not going to be a good one, right? Or if you rush a kicker out there, a lot of times, sometimes it's just not a good kick. So kickers are creatures of habit. And if you break that, it can mean the difference of making or missing a kick. And I will say this. When you have a great kicker, you take it for granted because you don't ever hear about your kicker, right? And it's not a big deal. I mean, there's a reason why when we had Money Matt down here in Atlanta, we were winning football games because Money Matt didn't miss kicks until Money Matt turned 54 and couldn't kick anymore. And I love Matt Bryant as a person. He's a great kicker. Tough. Yeah, I mean, I've had a great opportunity to get to know him through the years. Our sons are the same age, played at the same program. His wife is a trip. If you ever get to meet Melissa, she's amazing. She's awesome. But they're enjoying retirement down in Orange Beach. But we just took it for granted. I mean, we went from Morton Anderson to somebody in between who was good, and then Matt Bryant. And Matt Bryant was just amazing when he was here. And when you got one, you take him for granted. When you don't, you hate the world.
I mean, when you start handing out nicknames to your kickers, that means you're in good business when it comes to kicking. Yeah. You had Goggles for Rodrigo, and Georgia. Yes,
Specs.
Respect the specs, baby. And then you have Matt Money Bryant in Atlanta. Justin Tucker, golly, whoever has to follow up Justin Tucker out in Baltimore.
Man. Good Lord.
I'm so sorry, man. You're following up probably the greatest kicker in NFL history, arguably. So, yeah.
Speaking of Justin Tucker, did y'all see that video from the other day where he was clowning on Russell Wilson on the plane ride home? Did y'all see that?
Oh no.
Doing calisthenics in between the.
Yeah. Yeah, because all right, so if you didn't see it, Russell Wilson supposedly on the way to London, and it's like an 8-hour flight to London or whatever. For like 4 hours, the dude is sitting here doing high knees and all this other stuff throughout the aisles of the plane, like on the way to London. So like that's been a joke for the entire week. And so somebody after the game, the Ravens game, and it was on the plane, and somebody took a camera to Justin Tucker, and somebody asked me, he was like, I heard Lamar Jackson was going to start leading us into some high knees and stuff here real quick. And he said, Ravens flock, let's fly. And I started dying laughing. It was hilarious.
And the bad news,
it was funny.
The bad news is that Denver won today. They pulled out the win in London. And so that's going to be the new pregame ritual. That's going to be it. Now he's going to be doing high knees on every flight.
After the game? You see, after the game, he was talking to Laura Rutledge, and he said, "Denver or Broncos country, let's ride." And he walked off.
You rolled her eyes at him.
Oh yeah, it was funny. It was funny, man. Laura Rutledge was about to die laughing. She had to walk off camera so she could finally laugh because it was funny.
God.
It was pretty bad. God. But sorry, I didn't mean to jump into that. But like when you get a kicker that starts to clown you, that's pretty bad, man.
Justin Tucker's about the only kicker in the league right now that can do that.
He is. That's what I was about to say too. He's the only kicker that has the ability to clown other people because he's money. He is out there.
You got to earn your respect in the league to be talking smack as a kicker, man. And Justin Tucker has without a doubt done that. But the only thing I was going to add on about this Atlanta-Carolina game is that coming into this season, Atlanta was expected to be a bottom 3 team in the league. They were expected to have a top 5 draft pick. Like everybody, I mean, their win cap was like 3 wins at tops for most teams. Yeah, a lot of people. You weren't the only one. Sorry, everybody had this team listed as like a 3-win team max. You got 4 wins already. You're at the top of the NFC South right now. You're the number 1 seed in the NFC South. You are playing for a playoff spot right now. And like I said, the schedule only gets easier as you get on through it. So Atlanta's in a pretty good spot. And so you're exceeding expectations right now. So, and like with Cordero Patterson is hurt. AJ Terrell is hurt. You don't have Calvin Ridley this year. You got a lot of young guys in there playing, like Drake London. He's been a big focal point of the offense. Algier at running back has been filling in for Cordero, and he's looked solid as well. There's a lot of good things going on in Atlanta. There's a lot of good things to build off from the season. And the fact that you're exceeding expectations already is a great sign for the Arthur Smith regime in Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was excited. I think that was probably one of the most enjoyable Falcons games we've had in a while. Listen, it wasn't great football. I don't think we can make an argument that it was great football schematically or execution wise. I think you could pick that thing apart all day, but it was very enjoyable. And another game that was enjoyable for me, and I'm sure we got a lot of games to get to, boys. The Dolphins and Lions. I'm excited to see Tua bounce back and have a really good game. 29-36, 382 and 3 touchdowns. I picked him up on the waiver wire because everybody thought he was dead. But actually he's still alive, and he played really, really well today. And Tyreek Hill was excited to have his quarterback back because he's putting up those numbers that he was putting up that are going to make him a Pro Bowler, which that doesn't even exist anymore. So
yeah, 3 touchdowns, 382 yards. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, so
382 yards, man. That's insane.
And the Lions are another one of those teams, kind of like the Falcons, where like their defense is doo-doo, okay? I get that. But their offense is putting up points. I mean, they had like a week or two where they didn't play well offensively, but they're 1-6 guys, and they scored 27 points today. They didn't score anything in the second half, much in a similar way. It was either last week or the week before. It was very similar. But the Lions have been scoring points all year, and they are not winning football games, and that's got to be extremely frustrating. But as Falcons fans, we have been there before where our team would score a ton of points and we could never win. So I don't know if you guys
gives up 30-plus points a game. That kills you, man. You can't play like that.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, Jared Goff in his years with the Rams, the year where he was putting up big numbers, who do you have toting the ball around? He had Todd Gurley back there in the backfield running the rock for him. And the Lions only rushed for 82 yards today. They did throw they threw for 321 yards, but Jared Goff is a guy that the run game complements his play style. And if you aren't running the ball successfully, it's just you're not going to win many ball games with him back there under center. And right now the Lions are without DeAndre Swift. He's been dealing with an injury for a good portion of the season.
He came back today. He scored a touchdown today, by the way. Yeah,
he played today. He had 5 carries for 6 yards. So they're kind of easing him back,
receiving touchdown. Yeah, he's in back, but I think he had a receiving touchdown. So he's getting back in there, but he is being eased back in. He needs a little bit of time. He's not perfectly ready to go.
So,
but I think that's an issue. When you have 82 yards rushing in an NFL game, you're not setting yourself up for a great spot to win. Yeah. And I understand the Dolphins only had about 107, so they didn't have like a ton more, but also they had a lot more passing yards too. They had about 60 more passing yards on top of that as well.
For sure.
So I think it's one of those games that, I'm with you, Dan. Like, it's one of those things as a Lions fan, they put up enough points to be way better than 1-6 so far this season. But we know how that feels as Falcons fans after you give 30 plus points a game and all that kind of stuff. And what do you expect your offense to do? You can sit here and score points, but it doesn't mean anything if your defense is constantly just completely selling you and you have no chance of actually coming back. It just makes it extremely difficult for a team like that.
I was just going to add on, they've been close. They have had some games where they've been blown out, but they're losing close. They lost to the Eagles by 3. They lost by 9 to the Commanders. They lost by 4 to the Vikings, lost by 3 to the Seahawks. They got blown out 2 weeks in a row by the Patriots and Cowboys. And then you lose by 4 today, but they're losing close to good football teams. So while you may not be getting results in the win column, you're hanging in there with really good football teams. And so that at least kind of gives you something positive to build off of. Like, you're right there in the mix. Maybe you're just a few pieces away from being back in the mix and being a contender.
Another game that I have my eyes on and I was paying attention to is the Vikings and the Cardinals. You want to talk about two teams where if you tell me the records, I'm like, are you serious right now? And I'm going to have to go double check because I don't believe you. Okay. The Vikings are 6-1 and 4-0 at home.
Nobody's been talking about them.
Nobody. And then on the flip side of that, everybody was all Cardinals. They're 3-5, right? So, I mean, you got two teams who are not performing up to expectations. Go ahead.
Hey, the new Modern Warfare dropped, all right? So Kyler Murray's been a little busy.
I was going to say the same thing.
He's not truly focused on football right now.
He's been busy this week, man.
He's got to get
My
those
man
golden
threw it
camos,
this week.
man.
Those double
Hey.
XP weekend probably this weekend too. You know, the first weekend of
Look.
launch.
Pee Wee threw for 44 times today, boys.
Pee Wee.
326
He called him
yards,
Pee Wee.
3 touchdowns. I mean,
That's a first.
Man was slinging it all over the place. I mean, it wasn't going to where he needed it to go all the time. But Dalvin Cook had a good game today. He has not had a good, strong game out of the backfield. I know everybody talks about Jefferson on that team, but they got a couple other guys that can go get the ball. Adam Thielen is one of the guys that I've always liked, and he goes under the radar. Adam Thielen can get it done. And,
Adam Thielen
he was
was
the guy before Jefferson.
He was a mainstay along Stephon Diggs in Minnesota. I mean, like he was a major player in the Vikings offense. And then all of a sudden, Justin Jefferson explodes, and he's kind of been packed down on the depth chart a little bit and hasn't gotten as many targets. But he's still a really good football player.
Cool story about Adam Thielen too. Cool story about him is he played at Minnesota. He was undrafted. And he didn't go to the NFL. He wasn't even like a free agent that got signed right away. And I'm pretty sure, like the story goes, that he was bagging groceries, I swear to God, or stocking shelves at a grocery store. And they had an open tryout. And the dude made the team through an open tryout and then became their best wide receiver until you started getting Justin Jefferson. And once Stephon Diggs left and it was him. He was their best receiver. That's insane. What a cool story.
And there are so many good stories across the league that get overlooked by just bonehead stuff. But you're 100% right. And then some of these guys like Tony Romo was a good story coming out of, was it Northern Illinois, right?
It was undrafted, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was like Eastern Illinois or something like that. It was a nowhere school, and and then look at Cooper Rush, and we've been indoctrinated with that story because it's Dallas.
It was also Kurt Warner also had a story like this, by the way. It's a similar
bagging groceries out of northern Iowa. You're right. This thing is littered with these, but getting back to the Vikings, they just continue to win, and they've got Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. And it was 5 or 6 years ago that he left Washington, and they chose Robert Griffin III over Kirk Cousins, and they made that decision. And people kind of laughed when the Vikings signed Kirk Cousins at that time. They're like, he's a nobody. And, of course, if something goes wrong, they're going to blame him. We 100% get that. We're not foolish. But the guy just wins. And he's not flashy. He's not anything special. He just wins. He's a more pedestrian Matt Ryan, I guess, right? Where if you just put the pieces around him, the guy wins. So
I think it goes to show
I'm just really impressed. Huh?
I think that just goes to show that there's still a place for quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins in the NFL. Everybody wants to chase after the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, and the Justin Herberts of the world, where they can just sling it all over the yard. They look really pretty doing it, and they make highlight play after highlight play. But Kirk Cousins, he ain't going to be the feature on Twitter. He's not going to be trending on Twitter because of the throws that he makes or because of his arm strength or anything like that. But he's cerebral. He knows how to get things done. He knows how to run an offense. And like you said, Dan, he wins football games. And that's the most important thing, is that if results are producing, then, that's what produces the wins. And that's what's most important.
So when you talk about the Vikings too, I think what made everybody kind of lose focus on them, I think it was week 2. They lost in week 2. And so once somebody loses early in the season, it kind of makes you not necessarily look at them as a bigger team and stuff like that. And they kind of fall under the radar. And I think that's what happened to them. But who did they lose to? They lost to the Eagles. The Eagles are still undefeated. The Eagles right now are 7-0. And you got Jalen Hurts out here still looking incredible. You got Miles Sanders out here running for 80 yards in the game as well. You've got a pretty good balanced team right now overall, and you've got Jalen Hurts looking incredible, and he's probably going to run for an MVP type candidacy at the end of it. But as far as the Eagles go, instead of talking about the game fully, y'all can talk about the game if you want to as well. It was against the Steelers, and it was a 35-13 game. But what I was going to talk about is the Eagles as a whole, because we're at the halfway point of the season, and they're 7-0. They had a bye week already. Their schedule looks pretty favorable.
Just about to say, they don't play nobody.
They could go undefeated, and their schedule's not their fault. I think we kind of mentioned this a little bit last week. They could easily go undefeated this year, y'all. Their next couple of games is they got the Texans on Thursday night, this coming Thursday night. Then they get the Commanders, the Colts, and then they get the Packers, which the Packers could be a decent team. They're 3-4. Let's see what they do tonight. We'll talk about them later. Then they get the Titans, the Giants. The Giants are a pretty good team too, though. They're 6-2. They're decent.
Giants and Cowboys are going to be the two. Giants and Cowboys
Yep.
are about the only two teams that
They're division.
might.
They're division games.
Yeah.
Yeah, their division games are going to be tough games. So you get those teams in your divisions. You play twice a year. Those are tough games. They squeezed past the Giant or the Cowboys like last week or the week before last week on a close game that they should have been blowing out, but all of a sudden Cooper Rush was still starting quarterback at that point in time, and he had a really bad game. And so that was their loss to the Eagles. They get a rematch. The Cowboys get a rematch in that game, so that could go a little different. But right now, the Eagles look dang good.
And they're hitting you from many different angles. I mean, they got wide receivers. A.J. Brown stepped up today, 6 receptions, 156, 3 touchdowns. And then Miles Sanders is a guy who – Miles Sanders is one of those running backs who just does enough, right? I mean, if you think about Miles Sanders with the Eagles, like I want to say he's had a couple games where he's blown up, but for the most part, it's just enough. Usually around that 70 to 80 yards rushing and maybe a touchdown here or maybe a touchdown in the air. Catch the ball out of the backfield, does a good job of blocking in the backfield, keeps Jalen Hurts upright. Jalen Hurts is having a remarkable season. And if you stack up that room with Jalen Hurts, Tua, and Mac Jones, and we talk about who's the best quarterback out of that group in the NFL, it's Jalen Hurts to this point. I mean, Tua is playing amazing. So, I mean, it's a tight race right there. And Jonathan said something the other day because he said it first, and I wanted to say it too. I think Jalen Hurts resurrected his career by going to play with Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma, and I think it completely changed the way that he plays the football game. And I actually really enjoy watching him play. The guy throws for 285 today, but he only threw it 28 times. And you say only 28 times. A lot of these NFL quarterbacks, if you go back and look, they're throwing over 30, 40 times a game, and he's really economical with the way that he distributes the ball, and he makes really, really good decisions. And you're right. Like, you got a guy who's leading your team that makes really good decisions, is efficient with the football. You have weapons around him to support him. What does that sound like to you guys? Doesn't that sound an awful lot like Russell Wilson when he was out with the Seahawks? Listen, I think Hurts is a better quarterback in general than Russell Wilson, but it's very similar to that time period of football where they have a really good defense, and it's Jordan Davis made them a really good damn defense, boys.
Unfortunately, he got carted off the field today, and it sounds like he's got a pretty bad high ankle sprain. It's going to be out for a while.
Jordan,
when you're big like that, when you're big like Jordan Davis, man, you're not coming back quick from that because that injury, you put so much weight on that ankle. Yeah, he's. Did we expect anything else? Yeah, did we expect anything else from him in Philly?
He's just no.
He was worthy of the pick that they gave him. I mean, Nakobe Dean is still, in that linebacker room as well for the Eagles.
He's starting, is he not?
I think so.
Yeah,
I don't know officially.
Yeah, the Eagles are a good football team. I don't want to blow them up too much because I hate the freaking Eagles. And they're dilly.
He had one tackle today, Nakobe Dean, by the way. So he's not doing a ton.
Stoddard, pull up this comment by Alex real quick. I got something I want to say about this.
All right.
Kirk Cousins is a Stetson Bennett of the NFL. Well, that is, that's. I'll give it to you. I can see the comparisons. I can see how neither one of them are going to be very flashy, but they're going to get the job done. I'll tell you who I think is kind of the Stetson Bennett of the NFL, and it's Daniel Jones. I say Daniel Jones is kind of like the Stetson Bennett of the NFL. And listen, Dan, just give me a chance. I know Daniel Jones is 6'5", and I understand. So that, like, not height wise, not physicality. But Daniel Jones is sneaky athletic. He runs the ball a good bit. He's not going to put up flashy numbers. He has 1,223 passing yards on the year, only 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The Giants are, what we said, they're 6-1 right now. They're having a pretty good season right now, and he's playing well. He got hated on a lot early on in his career with the Giants, and this year he's been playing pretty solid, and they're producing wins with him at quarterback. And he doesn't get the credit that he does for his athleticism. He's got a pretty strong arm, a lot of something else that people don't talk about. And it's the same thing with Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett has sneaky athleticism, and his arm is a lot stronger than what people think. So I would say Daniel Jones and Stetson Bennett have a lot of similarities in those traits.
You know what else they have in common? Most everybody in their fan base hates them. So, you know what? Maybe that's the best comp you could have ever come up with.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Daniel Jones on the day, though. So the Seahawks today beat them 27-13. It was not the best day for the Giants and their offense as a whole. They only scored 13 points. That's what gave them that 6-2 record, their second loss of the season. They have been looking pretty good. Daniel Jones today was 17 for 31 for 176 yards and no touchdowns or interceptions, but no touchdowns on there. Saquon Barkley only had 53 yards rushing. We talked about this a week or two ago.
Ding.
That's a team that needs a running game going. And when your best running back, when you have Saquon Barkley and he can only muster up 53 yards.
The Titans are in the same boat.
Yeah, but at least the Titans had Derrick Henry go for 219 today. Oh, my God.
I know, but what I'm saying is, like, man, if Derrick Henry ain't on, the Titans ain't going to be doing nothing, man.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the topic that Jeremiah wanted to talk about today, about a lot of these young quarterbacks getting a start. And I'll let Jeremiah take off with it, but I just want to say the number one thing that you have to have for a young quarterback is a solid running game. And you have to have a good tight end. If you have a good running game, a decent offensive line and a really good tight end, a young quarterback can be successful. Jeremiah, rip it, babe.
So here's the thing with it. So speaking of the young quarterbacks, Malik Willis got the start today because Ryan Tannehill was apparently dealing with some type of illness or whatever his issue was. My issue with the Titans on this is as far as the quarterback side goes, is I understand why you didn't throw the ball a ton because you had Derrick Henry, 32 carries for 219 yards. But to get to that 32 carries is a ton for a running back. I understand that Derrick Henry is absolutely a workhorse. 32 carries, though, you're putting too much on a guy. We talked about this. They have a limited. That's got to be
half their offensive snaps.
At pretty darn close. I mean, they only threw the ball. They ran the ball 45 times. And they threw the ball 10 times. So, yeah, it was half of the snaps. It was over half of the snaps. He took the ball more than 50% of their offensive snaps of the day. My issue is this. I did watch the game, on Red Zone, so I saw different clips and stuff like that of it. I didn't watch every single play. 6 for 10 for 55 yards from Malik Willis on his first start. They did not let him throw the ball. You didn't. His one interception he did throw. He had no touchdowns. He did have an interception. It was not a good throw. He threw it behind the receiver on kind of a dig route. A deep dig route. And it was behind the guy, and it was not a good throw, so it was picked off. But 6 for 10, if you're going to go with your young quarterback and let him get out there, when your run game is working like that too, let him throw a little bit. Let him get comfortable. And maybe you beat the Texans by more than 7 points on a 17-10 game against the Texans. I mean, come on.
I think that kind of speaks to where maybe his development is at right now and kind of where they trust him in the offense right now. If they're not letting him throw that much. But on the other hand, man, if Derrick Henry's on, he's on. Just hand him the rock and let him go, especially when you got a rookie quarterback back there. You don't want to put any more pressure than that he already has on his shoulders. So if Derrick Henry can take the load for the game when Malik Willis is in, then you got to let him do that because if that's what's going to lead you to a win at the end of the day, then that's what you got to do. And so I think if they're not letting Malik Willis sling the ball around, then that probably kind of tells you he's still in the early stages of his development. And we knew this when he was coming into the NFL and he was getting drafted. He is a raw prospect, dripping with tools. He has everything he needs to be successful in the NFL. He just needs to kind of develop it. There you go. Stoddard's a Liberty alumni, so he's a little biased to Malik Willis. If that's why he's pushing this agenda that Malik needs to be throwing the ball more. But he was very raw coming into this league. So if it's good that he's getting his feet wet now and he's getting some in-game experience, and it's only going to help him further along in his journey in the NFL. I think he'll be very successful one day. He's just got to be patient with it.
Yeah, he's one of those quarterbacks that 100% needs development. Sam Ehlinger is the other quarterback that had a chance to play today. His first, I believe this was his first start ever. I think he's played in games before, but he's never started
was his
before.
First start. Same thing with Malik. Yeah. Malik had played in a couple of games, but this was his first start today. Yeah.
Well, Tyler Heineke gets to go buy a new pair of baby blue Jordan 1s because he buys a pair of Jordans of the color of the team of every team that he beats. Well, he beats Sam Ehlinger today.
Does he really do that?
Yes, and then he'll wear them to the press conference all week. So it's amazing. Flex. It's on Twitter. Go look it up. Tyler Heineke, who's from Collins Hill, by the way, right down the road from me. It's awesome. But Sam Ehlinger goes out there. That's game may have set football back 50 years. That was a terribly boring game to watch. It was on Red Zone, and you could tell that they didn't want to go to it ever. Like they would go to it and be like
17-16, with a late score by Washington to take that lead.
Absolutely atrocious. I feel again something we talked about off air is I feel so horrible for Matt Ryan. I mean, I really thought in the depth of my soul that we were sending him to an opportunity to go be successful and have one more run at it before he walks away. And Jonathan, you said something in our pre-show about you cannot believe that you would make a move for Matt Ryan like this and then give him such a short leash. If you want to expand on that, go ahead. But Sam Ehlinger did nothing for me today.
I understand that Matt Ryan is hurt, and I get that may have played a role in this decision. But the head coach himself said that did not play a role in that decision. He said that they were going to yank Matt Ryan as a starter regardless.
They said it was the rest of the season.
Yeah, for the rest of the season. So I don't understand why you go after the veteran quarterback and someone that has had a lot of success and someone that's looking for a change of scenery, and a little like pretty much at the halfway point, you want to go ahead and yank him. I just don't understand, especially with Jonathan Taylor was hurt a lot of the season. And I don't know what maybe it's just Matt Ryan has horrible luck, but the Colts rank towards the bottom in the league of sacks allowed this year. And it seems like horrible offensive lines just seem to follow Matt Ryan. And it's funny because the Colts have been known to have one of the best offensive lines in the league every single year. It's why Jonathan Taylor has been so good so early in his career, because they got some dudes blocking up front. But, man, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's his luck. Maybe he has bad karma. I don't know. But Matt Ryan just didn't have the best scenario, in my opinion, to be successful in Indianapolis this year.
Well, I can tell you the one thing is that whenever you pay your quarterback that much money, you have to sacrifice elsewhere. And typically it's the offensive line, because they for whatever reason, a lot of coaches feel like offensive line personnel is replaceable. You just go get another fat body and stick them up there. And that is not true. Look at the Cowboys. The Cowboys had the best offensive line in football for 2 or 3 years, and Zeke Elliott looked like an absolute animal. And then they're like, oh, now we got to G up Zeke, and we're going to have to make some changes on the offensive line because we can't afford to pay them all. And now, I mean, like, Zeke doesn't exist anymore.
It's your insurance, man.
Yeah, I mean,
Zeke was out today. Zeke didn't play.
I'm just telling you.
Tony Pollard, though. Tony Pollard had a good game.
Well, because he's a hell of a running back, and he's better than Zeke.
Anyway,
that's another conversation.
He had 3 touchdowns today.
Yeah.
3
All right,
touchdowns
go ahead. Talk
today.
about the Cowboys.
Talk about the Cowboys? All right. So the Cowboys and Bears, actually that brings up this comment too, because I saw this a second ago. So you bring me to that game. Will Fields be a bust on that game? I don't know if he'll be a bust. I think he needs some time. I think he needs it's too early to say whether or not he would be a bust. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's playing well. The last season he got starts, and this year he's starting. He's not looking incredible, but I'm not necessarily going to call him a bust just yet. But he was 17 for 23 with 153 yards passing today. So he didn't throw a lot of incomplete passes, had 2 touchdown passes. Maybe it's just the Bears that just aren't great around him either.
That's why I feel like the Fields evaluation at this point is so hard, because you don't want to put a lot of blame on himself, and you don't want to call him a bust just yet, because he's in a pretty bad spot in Chicago right now. He's another one of these quarterbacks in the league that doesn't have like these top tier weapons to throw to, and it's just it's not looking good in Chicago, and it hasn't ever since he arrived. But at the same time, there's kind of been this trend with Ohio State quarterbacks in the league just not really panning out. And a lot of it has to do with their offensive system, where it's just you read one guy and then you either take off or you dump it off to your check down and let them make a play with their feet. And so maybe that does kind of translate to his struggles in the NFL right now and why he hasn't been very successful, because 153 yards off 23 completions. Is that what you said, Stoddard?
21. Hold on. 17 for 23. So 17 completions.
17 for 23. So 17 completions for a little over 200 yards. That tells me that you're not really taking deep shots with him. You're just kind of chunking it around the field, a little dink and dunk. And that's what he did at Ohio State for a long time. And it just hit for explosive plays. They just had dudes at the wide receiver position. He does not have dudes right now. So I think it's too early to call him a bust right now, but I think it is alarming.
All right, get out of the paint and let me cook. All right, so Ohio State has been known for the one-read system, okay? The biggest issue that we had here at Georgia when Justin Fields was here is the communication we kept hearing is that he couldn't get the offense down. He couldn't figure it out. He wasn't a fit for the offense, having a hard time learning the plays. So he goes to Ohio State, puts up massive numbers. What is Ohio State? It's a one-read system. It is a quarterback system that a lot of high schools use with their raw athlete quarterbacks. It's one read. You're either reading the safety or reading the corner. We're going to go here or we're going to go there. It's one read. if you have 4 wide receivers, basically 1, maybe 2 exist. The other 2 don't even exist. It's a one-read system. Whenever Justin Fields has to diagnose the entire secondary, and he never gets to his 3rd or 4th read, and if he does, it's dumb luck. It's because he's running around with like a chicken with his head cut off. I think the biggest issue with Justin Fields up to this point is he doesn't know how to read secondaries. He doesn't understand route progression. He doesn't understand how to get from 1, 2, 3 to 4 in a timely manner. He doesn't know where to look on the field. He doesn't know where the holes are supposed to be. I don't understand how that's possible because he is an intelligent person. I mean, every person that I know that's ever had a lot of communication with him tells me he's intelligent. He made good grades. So it's not an intelligence thing. I don't know if he's studying the tape the right way. I don't know what the problem is, except for Ohio State has never put a quarterback in the NFL in the history of Ohio State NFL relationship that has a winning record. There's not one. You can try to prove me wrong if you want to. I would love to hear it. Go find me an Ohio State quarterback with a winning record in the NFL.
You know, Brooks Austin talks a lot about how the best way to learn defensive coverages and the easiest way is to to play college football, the video game, and just kind of analyze it. And that's what he does as part of his show. Maybe Justin Fields, he just starts sitting down in the sessions with Brooks on the NCAA 14 and study up on some coverages. Maybe that's what he needs to be doing.
Hey, NCAA 23 comes out next year, so we get a new one. We get a brand new one. We can get them wrapped up in that. So
it better live
Dan,
up to expectations.
Yeah, well, I'd see. Here's the thing: if you want to talk about it, it's not going to. But I think we'll still love it because it's a new NCAA game. Because it's just going to be the Madden engine and the Madden. It's just going to have a new skin on Madden. That's all they're going to do. The first one is going to have. That's what it's going to be. I'm here to tell you that's what it's going to be. And because it's EA, EA's making the game. How's it going to be different? That's their football game.
Because they were different. It's not going to be any different. They were completely different before.
Extremely, they were to an extent, but they weren't extremely different in the sense of like they weren't like what Madden wasn't what Madden is now back then either. Madden was better back in 2014 as well. It's not near as good anymore.
All
but
right, we get it.
I'm here to tell you that's what it's going to be.
We get it.
Don't hate. Okay, don't grow up too fast there, Jonathan.
Mute that man.
All right. All right. One more game I want to talk about before we transition to our picks for the week, for tonight and tomorrow. One other game, and specifically really wanted to talk about one player. The San Francisco went to LA, SoFi Stadium, and beat the Rams 31-14. Who I want to talk about, because we talked about it last week, Christian McCaffrey. That's who I want to talk about. Christian McCaffrey last week, I told you he had a decent amount of production overall. I think he accounted for like 60 yards or something as total offense. And after being there for like a day and a half, something like that. Today, the man did something that hasn't been done since 2005 by LaDainian Tomlinson. He scored a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and he threw for a touchdown today. The man had the triple crown, and he accounted for 183 yards of total offense today between rushing for 94, throwing for 34, and then I think his receiving yards was, I did the math already, 55 receiving yards. What a day. He's been there for a week and like 2 days, and that's the kind of production he has already. Oh, my God.
He's the best damn player on that team, and it's not even close. Christian McCaffrey is special. I think everybody was extremely frustrated in Carolina when he couldn't stay healthy, and I'm starting to wonder if he couldn't stay healthy or if he didn't want to be healthy because he was getting beat up down there in Carolina, because he looks healthy as a fox right now, running around all over the place, scoring touchdowns. I mean, he looked amazing. First of all, that ball he threw down the sidelines beautiful. I don't even know how to say his name. Ayuk or whatever.
Brandon
Ayuk. The tight end, I think.
Beautiful ball. I mean, he had to wait on it a little bit, but I mean, it was a nice tight spiral.
It was a good pass.
Christian McCaffrey.
Who knew that that San Francisco was actually trading for Christian McCaffrey to take over Jimmy G's job? That's what we didn't know. That was the plan all along. They're like, we're just going to get this guy, and he's going to do everything for us, so Jimmy G doesn't have to anymore.
Hey, Jimmy G had a pretty decent game today too. 21 for 25, so only 4 incomplete passes and 235 for 2 touchdowns. That's a pretty good game for Jimmy G as well.
that's how you're going to make your way through the NFL as a primary backup quarterback. If when your opportunity strikes, when you get the chance to get in the game, if you can just manage your way to football games and look good doing it, you're going to be able to find jobs all across the league until you want to hang it up, man. Jimmy G is a professional bag getter. He has found a way to just bounce around teams and find solid foundations, and he answers the call typically when his number gets called.
It's funny that you say looks good doing it because I texted you earlier. That might be the best looking backfield in all of professional football. You got Christian McCaffrey, who
That helps.
does a lot
It
of
definitely
modeling.
helps.
He does a lot of modeling on the side. When he wasn't healthy, he was making some checks, doing some flannel t-shirt type deal. And then you got Jimmy G, who looks like he should be on the cover of GQ magazine. I mean, good heavens. Maybe like if football
Keep it
doesn't
in your
work out
pants
for
over
that
there,
guy,
Dan. Come on now.
call
Jesus.
Calvin Klein, see if they're busy.
Oh, dang. Dan's got a little fantasy going on right now. I hear
He's
you,
got
man.
something
Sure.
going.
No,
Oh my
no
God.
judgment.
All right. I think that does it for that game. That was a pretty good game to watch. We can talk about next week. We can talk about how the Rams look, and we'll see how they play next week because I'm starting to get concerned about them, obviously, at this point, and Stafford as a whole there as well after coming off of the championship season. But so we won't touch on that today. We'll get back to that next week potentially. Let's go ahead and talk about the Sunday night game. 8:20. We got 4 minutes till that game's about to kick off. Buffalo and Green Bay. Buffalo's a minus 10.5 in this game, so they're favored by 10.5 points. Jonathan, how you feeling?
Do you even have to ask me? Like, honestly, Aaron Rodgers has been struggling
hold
this
on.
year.
Let's do it this way. Let's do this way. It's not whether or not they're going to win or lose. Do they cover the 10.5? Let's do it that way because they're going to win.
10.5 is a lot in the NFL. Dan talked about that last week. How 10.5 in the NFL is a lot of points to cover. And it's the game in Green Bay.
No, it's Buffalo.
Ooh, yeah. You know what? I'm taking the points, man. I think Buffalo's going to cover this game. I like Buffalo in this matchup.
Hey, listen, for me, I want to see how many points, fantasy points, Josh Allen can put up because that guy has been a machine. He had an off week. Do they come out a little bit rusty? That's the question. I believe that they have the ability to cover. And Josh Allen has quickly become one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL, and I just love watching that guy play. So, yeah, I'm going to go Bills. I say they cover, and, man, what a shame, Green Bay. What a shame.
So I'm gonna take the Bills at covering the 10.5 as well because it's at home. If it was on the road in Green Bay, I would say maybe they don't cover the 10.5. But at home, I think they're gonna cover the 10.5. Josh Allen looks really good still this year. No, it's no joke. And we talked about this last week. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't been it this season, and I don't think he doesn't have a lot of people around him to throw to, and it just hasn't looked very good. So I don't think they're going to be able to travel to Buffalo and then keep up in that game because their offense has been like terrible. Their offense has been god awful, and they're not going to keep up with Buffalo at home because Buffalo's going to put points on the board. Next and last game that we will talk about is Monday night, tomorrow night. Bengals sitting at 4-3 going up against the Browns at 2-5. Browns 2-5 is a little misleading though because I feel like they're a better team than that still. Cincinnati's favored by 3.5. Once again, they're on the road with the Browns favored by 3.5. How you feeling, Dan? I'll start with you this time.
Oh, I'm going to go Bengals, and I'm going to go cover. I think the Bengals are starting to click. I know early in the season there was a lot of conversation around what happened to the Bengals because they were not playing very well. But they are starting to click. We saw it. Granted, it was against the Falcons last week, but they are starting to click on all cylinders and really put up points. And if we're being honest, Cleveland is the Nick Chubb show. And Nick Chubb is amazing, by far the best back in the NFL. Derrick Henry has something to say about that. But, 1A, 1B, whatever you want to say, he's right there at the top of the league. And, to me, it's just Cleveland doesn't have enough. But, again, I'm terrible at picking games, so I'll probably be wrong. Jonathan?
I think this game's a little interesting. The Bengals are going to be without Jamar Chase, so it's all going to be predicated around
Higgins,
other guys. Can T. Higgins and Boyd pick up the slack for them? But Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. He's going to make big plays like he always does. And the Browns, it's the Nick Chubb show. That's pretty much all they got right now. If he's on, then they have a good shot at it. But I think the biggest thing for the Browns is if you can keep the ball in your hands and you can produce long scoring drives and you can keep the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands, and I like their chances, but it's hard to bet against Joe Burrow right now, especially with kind of the Bengals or with the Browns struggling a little bit. So I'm going to go with the Bengals.
See, I'm in the same boat right there. I think the Browns' best chance is if they get that run game and they control the clock. I think that is extremely important for them because, like Dan said, it is the Nick Chubb show. If he can make it his show at home and put up some points and dominate the game, then they have a chance. But I think that even without Jamar Chase, I think that Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are going to have a pretty good game with Joe Burrow out there. And then you still got Joe Mixon. Their run game has looked pretty good this season as well. They're a pretty balanced team overall. They're just a pretty good offense in general. So I do expect them to have a pretty good game. I think that they're just under 400 yards of total offense a game right now as a team. And so I think that they'll be able to roll in there and they'll cover that 3-point spread. Anybody got anything else to wrap up for us today before I close it out?
Yes, I do. It's time for the Atlanta Hawks segment of the show. And so Jonathan will be a part of this. All right, so Atlanta Hawks 4-2 early on the season. They had
Y'all get like
3 games
2 minutes, by the way. Game's about to kick off.
All right, fine. I got it. Whatever. They're 4-2 on the season. They had 3 games in 4 days. They took care of the Pistons in back-to-back games on Wednesday and Friday. They turned around and played the 5-0 Milwaukee Bucks on Saturday. They lost 123-115.
What a game,
Young
by the way.
decided, yeah, great game. Trae Young decided that he was gonna just be the Trae Young show. Only had 5 assists, had 42 points, and tried to go one-on-one with Giannis the whole game. The Hawks are not at their best when Trae Young wants to go bully ball. DeJounte Murray only got 21 points. Did shoot it 19 times, but I mean, if you look at Capella, only have 11. Hunter only had 14. Collins only had 4 points. That is not the recipe for success. They are a much better team when everybody's contributing. The one thing I will say early in the season I'm very, very excited about is Jalen Johnson is getting minutes. He played 17 minutes against the Bucks. That's important to me because that guy would have been a lottery pick had he not gotten hurt at Duke. Jonathan, anything to add on the
I'm just going to add in a 10-second rant right here. All right, we talk about everybody wants to come after Trae Young for being a foul merchant. You know, when he has 18 free throws in a game, it's all because that's all he can do. That's his whole offensive philosophy. Giannis Antetokounmpo had over 20 free throws, I want to say, against the Hawks. How come nobody's slandering him for being a foul merchant? It seems like every time that dude touches the ball, he gets to go to the charity stripe, man, and shoot 2 free throws. So that's my segment right there. That's my little rant, and I'll end it there on the Hawks. More to come.
And Trae only had 7 free throws. He was 7-7 from the free throw line and preached to the choir. Because, first of all, Giannis takes 48 seconds to shoot a damn free throw. Anyway, that is the NBA segment. Brought to you by Dan and Jonathan, and Jeremiah wants nothing to do with it ever. So
Not this week.
Peace.
Not this week. We'll carve out a little bit more time. We can talk about it next week as the season continues to roll on. So keep up with us if you want to hear a little bit more next week. Maybe we'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes on it next week and actually get into a little bit more of the NBA there. But we appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and reach out to us on social media as well. The 4 Wide Podcast. We have a really good time doing this. We look forward to doing it again next week. Looks like the game is about to kick off. So go ahead and switch over to NBC for Sunday Night Football, and you can watch a pretty good one, I think, between Buffalo and Green Bay. But like I said, I do think Buffalo is about to take away this game overall. Y'all have a good night. We will catch you guys next week.
Been waiting.